Security, remove this man from my terminal immediately. Jennifer Martinez's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. She grabbed the boarding pass from Cameron Brooks's hand and ripped it clean in half, the pieces fluttering to the polished floor. This is stolen. People like you don't fly first class. Before we dive into this story, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity regardless of how they look, hit that subscribe button and share this video. Because what happens next will stay with you long after it's over. Cameron Brooks sat perfectly still in the leather chair at Gate B14 in Denver International Airport's premium terminal. It was 9:45 on a Sunday morning, and he had every right to be there. His first-class ticket to Chicago was legitimate. His ID matched his name. But none of that mattered to Jennifer Martinez, who had already decided that a 45-year-old black man in Nike running shorts and a sweat-stained marathon t-shirt didn't belong in her space. What Jennifer didn't know was that the man she was humiliating owned Brooks Global Enterprises, a $3.4 billion logistics company. She didn't know his private jet was parked in a hangar 12 miles away. And she definitely didn't know that her entire career was about to end in the most public way imaginable. Cameron had earned the right to sit in that chair the hard way. Just 4 hours earlier, he had crossed the finish line of the Denver Marathon in 3 hours and 31 minutes, wearing the same bronze medal that now hung around his neck. But this wasn't his medal. It belonged to his father, Marcus Brooks, who had run the Boston Marathon in 2019 at age 64 and died 6 months later from a heart attack while loading boxes in the company warehouse he had built from nothing. Cameron wore his father's medal everywhere now. It reminded him of the man who had started Brooks Global with a single delivery truck and an unshakable belief that respect was earned through character, not clothes. Marcus Brooks had faced discrimination in every boardroom, loading dock, and bank lobby he'd ever entered. He had been told he didn't belong more times than Cameron could count. But he had never once let anyone else define his worth. Today, Cameron was traveling incognito. For weeks, his corporate office had received complaints through anonymous employee surveys about discriminatory treatment at various airports. Minority passengers reported being questioned more frequently, searched more thoroughly, and treated with less courtesy than their white counterparts. Cameron didn't believe in investigating these claims from behind a mahogany desk. He believed in seeing the truth with his own eyes. The premium terminal was busy for a Sunday morning. Families returning from ski vacations filled the gate areas. Business travelers typed frantically on laptops. A young mother tried to calm a crying toddler near the window. The atmosphere should have been relaxed routine. Instead, it crackled with tension because Jennifer Martinez had decided to make an example out of a man who looked different from her idea of a premium passenger. Jennifer was 42 with 9 years at Skyline Airlines and a reputation for running the tightest terminal in Denver. She had shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a severe bun, a pressed uniform that never seemed to wrinkle, and eyes that scanned every passenger like a security system. She took pride in her authority. Maybe too much pride. 3 weeks earlier, Jennifer's supervisor had warned her about customer complaints. Her approval ratings were slipping. Passengers found her approach unfriendly and overly aggressive. The critique stung because Jennifer believed she was simply maintaining standards. She believed in order hierarchy and the unwritten rules that separated premium passengers from everyone else. Rules that, in her mind, were being violated by the man in running gear who sat in her terminal like he owned it. Cameron's phone buzzed. A text from Lisa Rodriguez, his executive assistant. Flight on time. Everything okay? He typed back a single word. Developing. Lisa would understand. She had worked for Cameron for 8 years and knew that developing meant he was gathering information that would soon require action. 20 feet away, a college student named Alex Thompson looked up from his laptop. Alex was 20, a journalism major at the University of Colorado, and he was supposed to be writing a paper about media ethics. Instead, he found himself watching a confrontation unfold that looked like it belonged on the evening news. His fingers moved instinctively to his phone. He had learned in his media classes that sometimes the most important stories happen right in front of you, and you have exactly one chance to capture them. Alex pressed record. Near the gate counter, Elena Vasquez finished processing an upgrade and glanced toward the commotion. Elena was 28, had worked for Skyline Airlines for 6 years, and had processed Cameron's ticket herself that morning. She knew it was legitimate. She knew he had paid full price. She knew there was nothing suspicious about his reservation except the color of his skin and the clothes on his back. Her stomach tightened as she watched Jennifer approach Cameron's chair with the kind of deliberate stride that meant trouble. At a table near the window, Dr. Michael Torres looked up from his medical journal. At 52, he was chief of cardiology at Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital and had spent his career making life and death decisions with clarity and confidence. But watching a man be profiled 10 feet away from him made him freeze with indecision. He should say something. He knew he should say something, but saying something meant drawing attention, meant taking sides, meant risking the kind of confrontation that comfortable people spend their lives avoiding. So, he stayed silent and hated himself for it. Jennifer stood over Cameron, now close enough that he could smell her coffee breath. "Sir, I need you to come with me to the service desk for additional verification." Her voice carried the authority of 9 years and a badge that said terminal supervisor. But it also carried something else. Something that made every black passenger in the terminal recognize a tone they had heard before. Cameron looked up at her with steady eyes. "I've already shown you my boarding pass and my identification. Both are legitimate. What exactly needs to be verified?" "We've had issues with fraudulent bookings," Jennifer replied. "I need to confirm your ticket was purchased with your own credit card." Cameron reached into his gym bag and pulled out his wallet. He handed Jennifer his American Express black card. The weight of it, the metallic finish, the lack of a preset spending limit should have told her everything she needed to know. Instead, she held it up to the light like she was inspecting a counterfeit bill. "This could be stolen," she said. That's when Alex Thompson knew he was witnessing something that needed to be documented. His live stream went active. 3 viewers became 5, became 12. The comments started immediately. "What's happening here? Is this for real? Someone needs to help that man." Elena Vasquez couldn't stay quiet any longer. She walked over from the gate counter, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "Ma'am, I processed Mr. Brooks' reservation this morning. Everything is legitimate. He paid full price for seat 3A. Jennifer turned on Elena like a predator sensing weakness. "Vasquez, get back to your counter. This doesn't concern you. It concerns every passenger in this terminal," Elena replied. "You're treating him differently than everyone else, and we both know why." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was just getting started. Jennifer's face flushed red. In 9 years of authority, no gate agent had ever challenged her in front of passengers. The audacity was breathtaking. The insubordination was intolerable. And the worst part was that Elena was right, which made her wrong in a way that Jennifer couldn't admit even to herself. "Vasquez, you have exactly 10 seconds to return to your post before I write you up for insubordination." Jennifer's voice carried across the terminal. Other passengers were turning now, phones coming out the quiet murmur of Sunday morning travel replaced by the electric tension of a confrontation that was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Elena didn't move. "Write me up if you want, but I won't watch you humiliate a passenger who has done nothing wrong." Cameron watched this exchange with the kind of calm that comes from experience. He had seen this movie before. The only difference was the cast. In boardrooms, it was executives who questioned his credentials. In restaurants, it was maitre d' who couldn't find his reservation. In golf clubs, it was members who assumed he was there to clean their clubs, not play alongside them. The script never changed. Only the actors, But Elena Vasquez was improvising. She was going off script in a way that could cost her everything, and Cameron felt something tighten in his chest that had nothing to do with the marathon he had finished 4 hours earlier. Alex Thompson's live stream had reached 47 viewers. His phone was propped against his coffee cup camera aimed at the confrontation, his whispered commentary barely audible. "We're at Denver Airport Terminal B, and there's a situation developing here. A black man is being harassed by airport staff for no apparent reason. His ticket is valid. His ID is legitimate. But they're treating him like a criminal." The comments were flowing faster now. "This is 2024. How is this still happening? Someone called the news. That man is handling this better than I ever could." Dr. Michael Torres felt his medical training kick in. When someone is in distress, you intervene. When someone is being harmed, you stop it. When someone needs help, you provide it. It was that simple in the emergency room. But this wasn't the emergency room, and the harm wasn't physical, and Dr. Torres found himself paralyzed by the social complexity of what he was witnessing. He looked down at his medical journal and tried to focus on an article about cardiac catheterization. The words blurred. He could hear Jennifer's voice getting louder, more aggressive. He could hear Elena defending a stranger at the risk of her own career. And he could hear his own conscience telling him that silence in the face of injustice was its own form of complicity. But he stayed seated. Jennifer had reached her breaking point. Elena's defiance. Cameron's calm, the phones recording everything, the passengers staring. It was chaos. Her terminal was orderly chaos, and that was unacceptable. She reached for her radio. "Security to Gate B14. I have an uncooperative passenger refusing to comply with standard verification procedures." The radio crackled. "Copy Terminal B14. Officer Coleman en route." Robert Coleman was 48, former Denver Police Department, 6 years with airport security. He had the build of a man who had once carried authority and the swagger of someone who missed it. He had left the police force under circumstances he never discussed, but his security uniform still gave him the power to make decisions that affected people's lives. And in Robert's experience, most problems could be solved by establishing dominance early and decisively. He approached Gate B14 with his hand resting casually on his radio. His chest puffed out, his eyes already fixed on Cameron. Robert had made his assessment before he heard a single word of explanation. Black man, athletic clothes, expensive terminal, simple math. "Sir, I'm Officer Coleman, Airport Security. I understand you're refusing to cooperate with airline personnel." Cameron looked up at Robert with the same steady gaze he had given Jennifer. "I'm cooperating completely. I've shown my boarding pass, my identification, and my credit card. All are legitimate. The only thing I'm refusing to do is leave a seat I have every right to occupy. That's not your decision to make, sir. Terminal personnel have the authority to request additional verification if they deem it necessary." "Based on what criteria?" Cameron asked. Robert hesitated. It was a fair question. It was actually the only question that mattered. But Robert had built his career on authority, not answers. "Based on security protocols," he said finally. "What specific protocol have I violated?" Another hesitation. Robert looked at Jennifer, who looked away. He looked at Elena, who met his gaze with steady defiance. He looked at the growing crowd of passengers, many with phones out, all watching his next move. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me for additional screening." "No," Cameron said quietly. The word fell into the terminal like a stone into still water. The ripples spread outward, touching everyone within earshot. Passengers stopped mid-conversation. Gate agents looked up from their computers. A child stopped crying and looked toward the commotion with wide eyes. "Excuse me," Robert said. "I said no. I have broken no law. I have violated no policy. I have a valid ticket for a seat I am currently occupying. I'm not going anywhere." Alex's live stream had hit 127 viewers. His hands were shaking as he held the phone steady. He had never seen anything like this. A man calmly refusing to be moved, security escalating a situation that didn't need to exist, staff members taking sides in real time. It was like watching democracy happen at the individual level. "Everyone needs to see this," he whispered into his phone. "This is what courage looks like." Jennifer stepped forward. "Officer Coleman, this man is being deliberately uncooperative. He's disrupting terminal operations." "I'm sitting quietly in a chair," Cameron replied. "The only disruption here is the one you created when you decided I didn't belong in it." Elena couldn't stay silent. His reservation shows he paid $2,400 for that seat 3 weeks ago. His credit card cleared immediately. There were no fraud flags. "This is harassment pure and simple," Vasquez Jennifer snapped. "One more word and you're suspended." "Then suspend me," Elena shot back, "because I won't be quiet while you do this." Dr. Torres felt something break inside his chest. Not his heart, but the comfortable shell he had built around it. The shell that let him focus on his patients and ignore everyone else. The shell that let him save lives in the hospital while doing nothing to protect dignity in the real world. He stood up. His legs felt unsteady, which surprised him. He had performed surgery for 16 hours straight without his hands shaking, but walking 10 feet across an airport terminal to confront injustice felt like stepping off a cliff. "Excuse me," Dr. Torres said, and his voice carried more authority than he had intended. "I'm Dr. Michael Torres, Chief of Cardiology at Presbyterian St. Joseph. I've been sitting here for the past 25 minutes watching this entire interaction." Jennifer, Robert, and Cameron all turned toward him. Alex swung his camera to capture the doctor's intervention. The live stream viewer count jumped to 203. "This gentleman showed you his boarding pass," Dr. Torres continued. "He showed you his identification. You confirmed both were legitimate. He has been calm, respectful, and cooperative throughout. Yet you are still treating him like a suspect. I've been in this terminal for an hour and you haven't asked a single other passenger for anything. Not one." The truth of it hit the terminal like a physical force. Every passenger within earshot knew Dr. Torres was right. They had watched Jennifer walk past dozens of people without a second glance. They had seen her focus laser-like on Cameron from the moment he sat down. They had witnessed the kind of selective enforcement that everyone recognizes but no one wants to name. "Doctor, I appreciate your concern," Jennifer said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "But you don't understand security procedures." "I understand the difference between a procedure and prejudice," Dr. Torres replied. "What I'm watching isn't security. It's something else entirely." Robert felt the situation slipping away from him. Too many voices, too many phones, too many witnesses who weren't staying silent like they were supposed to. He needed to regain control. "Everyone needs to step back and let security handle this situation," he said, his voice rising. "Handle what situation?" Dr. Torres shot back. "A man sitting in a chair. That's the emergency that requires multiple security officers." Cameron reached into his gym bag and pulled out his phone. He typed a single text message. "Lisa, initiate. Protocol 7. Then he set the phone face down on the armrest and folded his hands. Somewhere across the country in a corporate office that controlled logistics for half the airlines in America, Lisa Rodriguez received the message and reached for her phone. Protocol 7 meant her boss was facing discrimination, and Protocol 7 meant that within minutes very powerful people were going to start making very uncomfortable phone calls. But Cameron wasn't ready to reveal his hand yet. He was gathering information. He was documenting behavior. And he was giving everyone in that terminal a chance to show him who they really were when they thought no one important was watching. The problem was someone important had been watching all along. Alex Thompson's live stream had reached 341 viewers, and the number was climbing exponentially. What started as a college student procrastinating on homework had become something much larger. Comments flooded the screen faster than he could read them. Is this live? This can't be live. What airport is this? Someone needs to call the media. This man is a king for staying in that chair. Share this everywhere. Alex had never experienced anything like it. His follower count was jumping from 847 to 1,200 to 1,500 in real time. News outlets were starting to monitor his stream. A comment appeared that made his blood run cold. This is Channel 9 News Denver. We're sending a crew now. For everyone just joining? Alex whispered into his phone, keeping the camera steady. We're at Denver Airport Terminal B. A man with a valid first-class ticket is being harassed by airport staff. He's done nothing wrong. He's shown his ID, his boarding pass, his credit card. Everything checks out. But they're trying to remove him anyway, and I think we all know why. The truth was spreading beyond the terminal, now jumping from phone to phone, screen to screen, carrying the story to people who understood exactly what they were seeing because they had lived it themselves. Near the service desk, Elena Vasquez had made a decision that would define the rest of her career. She walked to her computer terminal and began typing an incident report in real time, documenting everything she had witnessed. Her hands trembled as she wrote, but her words were steady and clear. 9:52 a.m. Terminal Supervisor. Martinez approached passenger Cameron Brooks, seat 3, a flight 447 to Chicago. Passenger presented valid boarding pass and identification. Supervisor questioned legitimacy without cause. 9:58 a.m. Passenger presented valid credit card. Supervisor continued to challenge verification despite all documents being legitimate. 10:05 a.m. Security Officer Coleman called to scene. No policy violations observed. Passenger remained calm and cooperative. Elena knew this report would matter. She didn't know how much yet, but she knew it would be read by people with power to create change or destroy careers. She kept typing. Dr. Torres remained standing, his medical journal forgotten on the table behind him. He felt something he hadn't experienced since his residency, the clarity that comes from doing the right thing at exactly the right moment. In surgery, there's a point where all the training and knowledge converge into pure instinct. You stop thinking and start acting, trusting years of experience to guide your hands. This was that moment translated from the operating room to real life. Officer Coleman. Dr. Torres said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who regularly delivered life and death news to families. I want to ask you a direct question, and I want you to answer it honestly in front of everyone here. Robert shifted uncomfortably. He didn't like being challenged, especially not in front of cameras and witnesses and a terminal full of people who were supposed to defer to his authority. What's the question? Robert asked. If this gentleman were white, wearing those same clothes, carrying that same bag with that same boarding pass, would you be standing here right now? The terminal went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that has weight and texture that presses against your ears and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Robert's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Jennifer looked at the floor. Cameron watched them both with an expression that might have been pity. Take your time, Dr. Torres said gently. Think about it. Really think about it. Alex's camera captured every second of Robert's struggle. The security officer's face cycled through emotions, anger, defensiveness, confusion, and finally something that might have been recognition. The comments on the live stream exploded. He can't answer because he knows the truth. This doctor is a hero. That silence says everything. Screenshot this moment. That's not relevant, Robert finally managed. It's the only thing that's relevant, Dr. Torres replied. And your inability to answer tells us everything we need to know. Cameron reached for his phone and dialed a number everyone in the terminal could see on his screen. Lisa Rodriguez, Executive assistant. He put the call on speaker. Cameron Lisa's voice came through clearly. Are you all right? I'm fine, Lisa, but I need you to conference in David Patterson from Skyline Airlines. Tell him we have a situation at Gate B14 that requires his immediate attention. Jennifer's face went pale. David Patterson was the regional director for Skyline Airlines Western Division. He controlled operations across 8 states and had the authority to hire or fire anyone in her chain of command. If Cameron Brooks had David Patterson's direct number, if he could get the regional director on the phone with a single call, then Cameron Brooks was not who she thought he was, Sir Jennifer said, and for the first time her voice carried uncertainty instead of authority. Let's not escalate this unnecessarily. I'm sure we can resolve this situation without involving upper management. Cameron looked at her with the same steady gaze he had maintained throughout the confrontation. Jennifer, you escalated this the moment you decided I didn't belong in that chair. Everything that happens from this point forward is a consequence of that decision. The phone crackled. Cameron, this is David Patterson. Lisa filled me in on the situation. I'm looking at Mr. Thompson's live stream right now. I've been watching for the past 10 minutes. The words hit the terminal like a thunderbolt. David Patterson, one of the most powerful executives in commercial aviation, was watching a college student's live stream of his own employees discriminating against a passenger. Jennifer looked like she might faint. David Cameron said calmly, I'd like you to hear what your terminal supervisor and security officer have to say about why a passenger with a valid first-class ticket should be removed from the premium terminal. I'm listening, Patterson said. Jennifer opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She had spent the last hour building a case based on assumptions she couldn't voice and policies that didn't exist. With her regional director listening and hundreds of people watching online, she finally understood that there was no good answer to the question everyone was asking. Robert stepped forward, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Sir, we were following standard security protocols for suspicious passenger behavior. What behavior? Patterson asked. The passenger was uncooperative. How was he uncooperative? He refused to comply with additional screening procedures. What additional screening procedures? What policy requires a passenger to submit to additional screening after presenting valid documentation? Robert couldn't answer because there was no such policy. There had never been such a policy. There was only bias dressed up as procedure discrimination, disguised as security, and assumptions that crumbled the moment they were exposed to scrutiny. Elena Vasquez had heard enough. She walked over to the group, her incident report printed and in her hands. Mr. Patterson, this is Elena Vasquez, Gate Agent 347. I processed Mr. Brooks's reservation this morning. I have his complete booking information right here. Premium ticket paid in full, no irregularities whatsoever. What's happening here is not about security. It's about prejudice. I see that, Ms. Vasquez, and I want you to know that your professionalism in this situation will be noted and rewarded. Jennifer felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Elena was being praised while she was being exposed. The natural order of authority was inverting in real-time broadcast to an audience that had grown to over 500 viewers and was sharing the stream across every social media platform in existence. Alex Thompson couldn't believe what he was documenting. He had started the stream to procrastinate on homework. Now he was capturing what felt like a pivotal moment in the ongoing conversation about race power and accountability in America. His phone battery was at 23%, but he had a portable charger, and nothing was going to make him stop recording. Everyone watching Alex whispered to his audience, "We just heard the regional director of Skyline Airlines confirm that there's no policy that would justify what's happening here. This is pure discrimination caught on camera being addressed in real time by corporate leadership." Cameron checked his watch. It was 10:17 a.m. Somewhere across Denver, Captain James Mitchell was performing pre-flight checks on a Bombardier Global 6000 that bore the words Brooks Global Enterprises in blue lettering along its fuselage. Cameron had sent him a single text 20 minutes ago. Prepare for departure. Destination unchanged. Timeline accelerated. But Cameron wasn't ready to leave yet. He was still gathering information, still documenting behavior, still giving everyone in that terminal a chance to show him who they were when they thought consequences didn't exist. The problem was, consequences always exist. They just don't always arrive when people expect them. David Patterson's voice carried through the speaker with the weight of authority that comes from controlling billion-dollar budgets and making decisions that affect thousands of employees. I want to be very clear about something. I've been watching this live stream and I've heard Ms. Vasquez's report. What I'm seeing is a passenger who has complied with every reasonable request and staff members who are creating a problem where none exists. Jennifer felt panic rising in her throat. 9 years of building authority, of establishing herself as someone who maintained order, of believing she was protecting the integrity of premium service. All of it was crumbling in real-time broadcast to hundreds of people who were sharing the story exponentially across social media. Robert Coleman sensed his partner's desperation and decided to double down. Sometimes, in his experience, the best defense was overwhelming offense. If you established dominance early and completely people backed down, they always backed down. "Mr. Patterson, with respect, you're not seeing the full picture from a live stream," Robert said, his voice rising to carry authority he no longer felt. "This passenger has been combative and uncooperative from the beginning. He's refused direct orders from airline personnel. That constitutes grounds for removal under federal aviation security regulations." Cameron looked at Robert with something that might have been surprise. After everything that had happened, after the mounting evidence that there was no legitimate basis for their actions, Robert was still trying to create a narrative that justified discrimination. Officer Coleman Cameron said quietly, "I'd like you to specify exactly when I was combative. You refused to comply with security screening. What security screening? I presented my boarding pass, my identification, and my credit card. All were verified as legitimate. What additional screening was required?" Robert's jaw worked back and forth like he was chewing on words he couldn't swallow. The truth was, there had been no security screening. There had been no policy violation. There had been only the black man in clothes that didn't match Robert's expectations of premium passengers and Robert's assumption that appearance equaled legitimacy. Alex Thompson's live stream had reached 672 viewers. The comments were flowing so fast they were barely readable, but the sentiment was clear. This security officer is digging his own grave. How is this still happening in 2024? That passenger is handling this like a CEO. Someone needs to find out who this man really is. The last comment made Alex pause. In all the chaos, no one had actually established who Cameron Brooks was beyond his name on a boarding pass. Alex quickly searched Cameron Brooks Denver on his phone while keeping the camera steady with his other hand. The results made his eyes widen. Dr. Torres had remained standing throughout the phone conversation, his medical journal forgotten. His comfortable silence shattered permanently. He watched Robert Coleman try to justify the unjustifiable and felt something he hadn't experienced since medical school, the moral clarity that comes from witnessing wrong and choosing to act. "Officer Coleman." Dr. Torres said, his voice carrying across the terminal. "I've been observing this situation for 35 minutes now. This gentleman has been nothing but polite and cooperative. He answered every question. He provided every document requested. The only thing he refused to do was leave a seat he had every legal right to occupy." "Doctor, you don't understand security protocols," Robert replied, but his voice lacked conviction now. "I understand basic human decency," Dr. Torres shot back. "And what I'm witnessing violates every principle of fair treatment and equal protection under the law." Elena Vasquez walked over to her computer terminal and pulled up Cameron's booking information for the 3rd time. She had verified it twice already, but she wanted to be absolutely certain when she spoke. The details were clear. Cameron Brooks' frequent flyer number credit card on file. Platinum status, $2,400, premium ticket purchased 3 weeks in advance. No flags, no holds, no irregularities. She printed the booking record and walked back to the group. Mr. Patterson, I have Mr. Brooks' complete reservation details right here. Platinum frequent flyer status with over 200,000 miles flown in the past 2 years. Premium ticket holder for 3 years running. Clean payment history, no security flags, no previous incidents. This passenger is exactly the kind of client our premium service is designed for. Jennifer finally found her voice, but it came out as a whisper. I was maintaining terminal standards. Whose standards, Dr. Torres asked. What standard requires passengers to pass an appearance test before occupying seats they've paid for? The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was rapidly spreading beyond anyone's ability to control it. Patterson's voice came through the speaker again. Ms. Martinez, I need you to explain to me in front of everyone present and everyone watching online what specific Skyline Airlines policy authorized you to challenge a platinum frequent flyer with valid documentation. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. 15. 20. Jennifer looked at Robert, who looked at the floor. Elena looked at Cameron, who maintained the same calm expression he'd worn since the confrontation began. There isn't a specific policy, Jennifer finally admitted. I was using my discretionary authority as terminal supervisor. Based on what criteria? Another silence. This one lasted nearly 30 seconds. His appearance, Jennifer whispered. The admission hit the terminal like a physical force. Several passengers gasped audibly. A woman near gate B12 said, "Oh my God, she actually said it." A businessman looked up from his laptop and shook his head in disgust. Alex Thompson's phone nearly slipped from his hands. He had just captured on live stream what thousands of discrimination cases struggle to prove explicit admission of bias from someone in authority. His viewer count had jumped to 891, and major news outlets were requesting permission to use his footage. Ma'am Patterson said, and his voice had gone cold. Did you just admit on a recorded live stream that you challenged a passenger's right to occupy a premium seat based solely on his appearance? Jennifer realized what she had said, and the color drained from her face completely. She opened her mouth to backtrack, to explain, to somehow undo words that were already traveling across the internet at light speed, being screenshot and shared and preserved forever. But there was nothing to say. She had told the truth, and the truth was damning. Cameron reached into his gym bag and pulled out a business card. It was simple, elegant, expensive cardstock with raised lettering. He placed it face down on the small table beside his chair. "When you're ready to know who you've been talking to," Cameron said quietly, "you can turn that over." Robert stared at the card like it might explode. Jennifer stared at it like it was evidence in a trial she was already losing. Elena looked at it with curiosity mixed with dread because she had a growing suspicion that everything was about to change in ways no one could predict. Dr. Torres felt his medical training kick in again. In trauma situations, you gather information quickly and act decisively. You don't wait for perfect conditions or complete knowledge. You make the best decision you can with the information available, and you live with the consequences. He reached for the card. Cameron held up a hand. "Not yet, doctor. Let's see how this plays out first." From the speakerphone, Patterson's voice cut through the tension. "Ms. Martinez, Officer Coleman, I want both of you to step away from Mr. Brooks immediately. Do not touch him. Do not speak to him. Do not take any action whatsoever until I arrive at the terminal." "You're coming here?" Jennifer asked, and her voice cracked on the question. "I'm in the car now, ET, 12 minutes, and Ms. Martinez. I want you to understand something very clearly. This conversation, this live stream, and your admission of discriminatory behavior are being recorded and reviewed by our legal department in real time. Every word you say from this point forward can and will be used in employment disciplinary proceedings. Jennifer felt the walls closing in. Legal department, employment disciplinary proceedings. The words hammered against her consciousness like nails in a coffin she had built with her own hands. Robert Coleman stepped backward, literally and figuratively distancing himself from a situation that had spiraled beyond recovery. His hand moved away from his radio. His chest deflated slightly, and his eyes darted toward the exit as if he were calculating escape routes. But there was no escape. Not with cameras recording, not with corporate executives involved, not with hundreds of people watching online, and thousands more joining every minute. Cameron checked his phone. A text from Lisa Rodriguez. Captain Mitchell reports, ready for departure. Legal team standing by. Media requests coming in. Are you ready for Phase 2? Cameron typed back. Not yet. Let them finish showing us who they are. Alex Thompson's stream had crossed 100 viewers and was trending on multiple platforms. His phone was overheating from the processing power required to handle the sudden influx of traffic. Comments were coming in from across the country Denver airport. This is shameful. Skyline Airlines were watching. This man's composure is incredible. Turn over that business card. Someone find out who Cameron Brooks really is. That last comment prompted more viewers to start researching. Within minutes, search results for Cameron Brooks' CEO began appearing in chat threads across social media. The pieces were starting to come together, but most people were still focused on the confrontation itself, rather than the identity of the man at its center. Elena Vasquez walked back to her gate counter and made a decision that would define her career. She picked up the internal phone and dialed the airport operations center. This is Elena Vasquez, gate agent B14. I need to report a civil rights violation in progress at the premium terminal. We have a passenger being discriminated against by supervisory staff, and it's being broadcast live online. Someone from airport administration needs to get down here immediately. She hung up before anyone could tell her to mind her own business or follow chain of command. Some moments require you to skip the chain of command and go straight to the people with power to create change. Dr. Torres remained standing, his decision to intervene having awakened something in him that had been dormant for too long. He thought about all the times he had witnessed smaller moments of bias and said nothing. All the times he had prioritized his own comfort over someone else's dignity. All the times he had been a bystander when he could have been an advocate. Not today. For everyone watching this live stream, Dr. Torres said, addressing Alex's camera directly, I want you to understand what you're seeing. This is how discrimination works in 2024. It's not burning crosses or water hoses. It's a man in a uniform deciding that someone doesn't look like they belong in a space they've paid to access. It's the soft bigotry of assumption dressed up as policy. The words carried across the terminal and through the internet, shared and reshared, becoming part of a larger conversation about race power and accountability that was happening in real time. Cameron listened to Dr. Torres's words and felt something he hadn't expected: hope. Not for himself, his outcome was never in doubt, but for the possibility that moments like this could create understanding rather than just outrage, progress rather than just viral content. His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Lisa Rodriguez. The caller ID showed Captain J. Mitchell. Cameron answered but didn't put it on speaker. Yes, Captain. Sir, I'm monitoring the situation through Ms. Rodriguez. The aircraft is ready whenever you are. But sir, if I may, that live stream has been shared by Channel 9 News, Denver, CNN, and 3 national civil rights organizations in the past 5 minutes. This story is about to get very big very fast. Cameron looked around the terminal at the faces watching him. Elena, who had risked her job to defend a stranger. Dr. Torres, who had found his voice after decades of comfortable silence. Alex, who had documented injustice because he believed it mattered. Even Robert and Jennifer, who were learning in the most public way possible that actions have consequences. "I know, Captain. That's exactly the point." David Patterson's black SUV pulled up to the terminal entrance as his voice continued through Cameron's speakerphone. "I'm walking into the building now. Ms. Martinez, Officer Coleman, Mr. Brooks. Nobody moves until I get there." Alex Thompson's live stream had reached 1,347 viewers, and the chat was exploding with research findings. "Guys, Cameron Brooks is CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises. Are you serious? The logistics company $3.4 billion in annual revenue. He has contracts with every major airline, including Skyline Airlines. Oh my God, they're discriminating against their own business partner." Alex read the comments with growing amazement, but he kept his voice low as he provided commentary to his audience. "Everyone viewers are researching, and it looks like Cameron Brooks might be the CEO of a major company. I can't confirm this yet, but if true, this situation just became much more serious." Elena Vasquez heard Alex's commentary and felt her stomach drop. She pulled up Brooks Global Enterprises on her computer and clicked on the leadership page. The photo that loaded showed Cameron Brooks in a tailored navy suit, standing in a corporate office with Denver's skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. The man in the photo looked exactly like the man in running shorts who had been sitting calmly in his chair for the past 45 minutes. Elena's hands started shaking. She had defended the right person for the right reasons, but she had also just witnessed her supervisor and airport security discriminate against someone with the power to shut down her entire airline. Dr. Torres saw Elena's expression change and walked over to look at her computer screen. His eyes widened as he read Cameron's biography. Chief Executive Officer Brooks Global Enterprises, founded 1987. Headquarters Denver, Colorado. Annual revenue $3.4 billion. Major clients include Skyline Airlines, Delta United, American FedEx UPS. "Dear God," Dr. Torres whispered. Jennifer Martinez had positioned herself near the windows, frantically checking her phone for any information about Cameron Brooks. When she found his company website, when she saw his executive photo, when she read about Brooks Global's $47 million annual contract with Skyline Airlines, she felt something inside her chest crack wide open. She had just spent 45 minutes publicly humiliating one of her airline's most valuable business partners. She had admitted on livestream that she discriminated against him based on appearance. She had called security on a man whose company paid millions of dollars annually to the airline that employed her. Jennifer looked at Cameron, still sitting calmly in his chair, still wearing his father's marathon medal, still carrying himself with the quiet dignity that had never wavered despite everything she had put him through. And she understood with crystal clarity that her career was over. Robert Coleman had been doing his own research on his phone, and what he found made his face go gray. Brooks Global Enterprises wasn't just any logistics company. It was the logistics company, the one that moved cargo for everyone, including government contracts, the one whose CEO had been featured on the cover of Fortune magazine last year, the one whose Denver headquarters employed 2,400 people and contributed $180 million annually to the local economy. Robert had tried to arrest one of Denver's most prominent business leaders for sitting in a chair. Cameron watched the recognition dawn on faces around the terminal and felt a familiar mixture of sadness and resolve. This was always the moment when people's attitudes changed. Not when they saw him as a human being deserving of respect, but when they saw him as someone with power deserving of fear. The transformation was instant and predictable and deeply depressing. But it was also necessary. Because sometimes change requires more than moral arguments. Sometimes it requires consequences. David Patterson walked through the terminal entrance like a man on fire. He was 52, silver-haired, carrying himself with the authority of someone who controlled operations across 8 western states. He spotted the crowd around gate B14 immediately and walked toward it with purposeful strides. Mr. Brooks Patterson said as he approached, and his tone carried the deference of someone addressing an equal. "I cannot begin to express how sorry I am about this situation." The word Mr. hit Jennifer like a slap. Not sir or passenger or this man. Mr. Brooks spoken with respect that had been absent from every interaction for the past hour. Cameron stood up for the first time since the confrontation began. At his full height, he was an imposing figure, 6'2" athletic build, carrying himself with the natural authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected thousands of people. The contrast between his marathon clothes and his corporate presence was startling. David Cameron said, and the use of Patterson's first name established immediately that they were colleagues, not passenger and airline executive. "I appreciate you coming down here personally. Of course. I've been watching the live stream. This is unconscionable." Alex Thompson zoomed in with his camera, capturing the interaction between two of Denver's most powerful business executives, one in running clothes and one in a tailored suit, treating each other with the mutual respect that had been absent from every other conversation in the terminal. "For everyone watching," Alex whispered to his 1,500-plus viewers, "we just got confirmation. Cameron Brooks is definitely the CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises, and he and the airline's regional director are speaking as equals. This is unprecedented." Cameron looked at Jennifer, who was standing near the windows with her face pale and her hands shaking. "Jennifer, I'd like you to know that I've been traveling incognito for the past month, visiting airports across the country. We've been receiving complaints through our corporate feedback system about discriminatory treatment of minority passengers. I wanted to see the problem firsthand." Jennifer's mouth moved, but no sound came out. "I've now experienced it firsthand," Cameron continued. "And I've documented it, thanks to Mr. Thompson's excellent live stream coverage." Alex felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. One of Denver's most powerful CEOs had just praised his journalism on a live broadcast that was rapidly approaching national news status. Dr. Torres stepped forward. "Mr. Brooks, I owe you an apology. I witnessed this discrimination for 25 minutes before I found the courage to speak up. That delay was unconscionable, and I'm ashamed of it." Cameron looked at Dr. Torres with genuine respect. "Doctor, you stood up when it mattered. That took courage, and it made a difference. Thank you." The grace in Cameron's response, his lack of anger or vindictiveness, his focus on progress rather than punishment, impressed everyone watching. Comments on Alex's stream reflected the shift. "This man has more class than anyone in that terminal. He's not angry, he's just disappointed. That's worse. How is he so calm after all that? This is what leadership looks like." Elena Vasquez approached the group, her printed incident report in her hands. "Mr. Brooks, I documented everything that happened. Every time, every statement, every action. If you need it for any formal complaints or legal proceedings, it's all here." Cameron took the report and read it quickly. Elena's documentation was thorough, professional, and damning. She had created a minute-by-minute record of discrimination that would hold up in any courtroom or corporate boardroom in America. "Elena, this is exceptional work. You protected a passenger's rights when it would have been easier to stay silent. That's the kind of employee airlines should treasure." Patterson nodded. "Miss Vasquez, your actions today reflect the highest standards of customer service and professional integrity. You'll be hearing from me personally about a commendation." Jennifer watched Elena receive praise for doing exactly what she herself should have been doing for 9 years, treating passengers with dignity regardless of their appearance. The contrast was stark and painful and final. Robert Coleman had backed away from the group and was standing near the security desk, speaking urgently into his radio. He was requesting backup, requesting supervisory support, requesting anything that might help him salvage a situation that had already destroyed his credibility and possibly his career. Cameron walked over to the small table where his business card still lay face down. He picked it up and handed it directly to Jennifer. "You wanted to know who I was," Cameron said quietly. "Now you know. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge?" Jennifer took the card with trembling hands and read it. The letterhead was elegant, expensive. Cameron Brooks, Chief Executive Officer, Brooks Global Enterprises. Below that, transportation solutions for America's largest companies. She understood with crushing finality that she had discriminated against someone who could end her career with a single phone call. Someone whose company paid her airline $47 million annually. Someone who had been profiled in Forbes, Fortune, and Businessweek as one of America's most innovative CEOs. But worse than that, she understood that she had discriminated against a human being who deserved respect regardless of his title or wealth or power. The business card shouldn't have mattered. His dignity should have been enough. Patterson addressed the growing crowd of passengers and airline employees. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make something clear. What you witnessed here today does not represent the values of Skyline Airlines. We are committed to treating all passengers with dignity and respect regardless of their appearance, background, or any other factor. The behavior you observed will not be tolerated." Alex's live stream chat erupted. Are they going to fire her? What about the security guard? This is justice in real time. Someone needs to be held accountable. Cameron checked his phone. Lisa Rodriguez had sent an update story trending on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. CNN requesting interview. Today, show wants you tomorrow morning. Legal team has prepared formal complaint. Media strategy team standing by. Your call on next steps. Cameron typed back. Schedule legal team for 2 p.m. Accept CNN interview for tonight. Decline Today Show for now. This isn't about publicity, it's about change. Dr. Torres approached Cameron privately. "Mr. Brooks, I run diversity and inclusion training at the hospital. What happened here today happens everywhere in smaller ways every single day. If you're serious about creating change, I'd like to help." Cameron studied the doctor's face and saw genuine commitment. "Doctor, I'd welcome your expertise. We're going to need medical professionals who understand both the psychological impact of discrimination and the ethical imperatives of intervention." Elena Vasquez overheard the conversation and stepped forward. "Mr. Brooks, if Skyline Airlines doesn't want employees who stand up for passengers' rights, I'd be honored to work for a company that does value those principles." Cameron smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. "Elena, Skyline Airlines would be foolish to lose someone with your integrity. But if they do make that mistake, Brooks Global is always looking for people who understand that doing the right thing matters more than following orders." Patterson held up his hand. "Ms. Vasquez isn't going anywhere except up the promotion ladder. Her actions today represent exactly what we want to see from our employees." Jennifer watched this exchange and understood that the natural order of her world had completely inverted. Elena, who she had threatened with termination, was being praised and offered opportunities. Cameron, who she had tried to humiliate, was surrounded by respect and deference. And she, the authority figure who was supposed to maintain control, had become the cautionary tale. Alex Thompson's phone battery was at 11%. But he had been streaming for over an hour and captured everything. His viewer count had stabilized around 1,800, but he knew the archived video would be watched by hundreds of thousands of people. News outlets were requesting permission to use his footage. Civil rights organizations were sharing his stream. He had documented something that would matter for years to come. "Everyone watching," Alex said into his camera, "we've just witnessed something unprecedented. A discrimination incident caught live, addressed in real time by corporate leadership, with immediate consequences for the people responsible. This is how change happens when people refuse to stay silent." Cameron looked at his watch, 11:23 a.m. Across Denver, Captain James Mitchell was completing final pre-flight checks on the Brooks Global Enterprises jet. The aircraft was fueled flight plan filed ready for departure to Chicago. But Cameron wasn't ready to leave yet. He had one more thing to do. Cameron pulled out his phone and dialed Captain Mitchell's direct number. The call connected immediately. Captain, change of plans. Bring the aircraft to Terminal B, Gate B14. I want everyone here to see exactly who they've been talking to. Sir, are you certain that's going to draw significant attention? Cameron looked around the terminal at the faces watching him, some with curiosity, some with respect, some with the dawning horror of recognition. Captain, that's exactly the point. Alex Thompson's live stream chat exploded when viewers heard Cameron's side of the phone conversation. Did he just call for a private jet? This is about to get insane. Someone record this. The whole terminal is about to see who he really is. Alex felt his hands shaking as he held the phone steady. His journalism professors had taught him about moments when stories become historic when you're documenting something that will be studied and referenced for years. This felt like one of those moments. Jennifer Martinez stood frozen near the window, still clutching Cameron's business card. She could see aircraft moving on the tarmac beyond the terminal, and she understood with growing dread that one of those planes was about to arrive specifically for the man she had spent an hour trying to humiliate. Dr. Torres felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. He had intervened in a situation that was about to become much larger than anyone had anticipated. His decision to speak up was about to be validated in the most public way possible, but it also meant he would be associated with this story forever. Elena Vasquez continued documenting everything in her incident report. She wrote 11:24 a.m. Mr. Brooks contacted private aircraft. Terminal atmosphere shifting as passengers realized scope of situation. David Patterson's phone was ringing constantly. Skyline Airlines headquarters, legal department, media relations, corporate communications. Everyone wanted to know what was happening at Gate B14 and what the company's response would be. Patterson answered one call and stepped away for a brief, urgent conversation. When he returned, his expression was grim. Mr. Brooks, I've just spoken with our CEO and board chair. They're horrified by what happened here today and want to meet with you immediately to discuss how Skyline Airlines can make this right. Cameron nodded. I'll be happy to meet with them. But first, I want everyone in this terminal to understand something about assumptions and appearances. In the distance, the sound of jet engines began to grow. Low at first, just a vibration in the floor, then louder, closer, more distinct. The kind of deep, powerful sound that makes people stop what they're doing and look toward the windows. Alex swung his camera toward the tarmac. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, a sleek white aircraft was approaching Gate B14. As it drew closer, lettering along the fuselage became visible, Brooks Global Enterprises in bold blue letters, impossible to miss. Oh my God, Alex whispered to his 1,900-plus viewers. His private jet is actually arriving. Everyone in the terminal can see it. The terminal erupted. Passengers stopped mid-conversation. Gate agents looked up from their computers. Children pressed their faces against the windows. The Bombardier Global 6000 taxied with the slow, deliberate authority of aircraft that costs more than most people will earn in a lifetime. Jennifer felt her knees go weak. She grabbed the back of a chair for support as the full magnitude of what she had done crashed over her like a wave. She had discriminated against someone who owned a $65 million private jet, someone whose company logo was now visible to everyone in the terminal, someone whose wealth and power were literally landing at the gate where she had told him he didn't belong. Robert Coleman stared at the aircraft with the expression of a man watching his career explode in real time. The radio on his belt crackled with urgent messages from Airport Operations Security. We have an unscheduled corporate aircraft at Gate B14. "What's the situation down there?" Robert couldn't answer because he didn't know how to explain that the situation was entirely of his own making. The Brooks Global jet came to a stop directly outside the windows of Gate B-14. Ground crews rushed to position jetway equipment. The aircraft's engines wound down with a whisper of expensive engineering. Through the cockpit windows, Captain Mitchell could be seen completing shutdown procedures. Cameron walked to the window and looked out at the aircraft that bore his company's name. It was a beautiful machine, a symbol of success that his father never could have imagined when he started with a single delivery truck. But it was also a symbol of the distance between appearance and reality, between assumptions and truth. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cameron said, addressing the terminal at large, "I want you to understand something. That aircraft belongs to Brooks Global Enterprises, the company I've spent the past 20 years building. We employ 18,500 people across 47 states. We move cargo for Amazon, FedEx, UPS, and half the airlines in America." He paused, letting the information settle. "But none of that should matter. I shouldn't need a private jet for my dignity to be respected. I shouldn't need a Fortune 500 company for my boarding pass to be accepted as legitimate. I shouldn't need billions in annual revenue for airport staff to treat me like a human being." Dr. Torres felt something break open in his chest. Cameron was using his privilege not to demand special treatment, but to highlight how wrong it was that privilege should be necessary for basic respect. "The only reason I'm revealing who I am," Cameron continued, "is to demonstrate how appearance-based assumptions work. Jennifer looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong in first class. Robert looked at me and saw a security threat. They were both wrong, but their mistakes revealed something important about how our institutions actually function." Alex's live stream had reached 2,100 viewers and was being shared across every major social media platform. Comments were flowing faster than he could read them. "This is the most powerful thing I've ever seen. He's using his privilege to fight discrimination. This man is a class act. Everyone needs to see this. Share this everywhere." The jetway extended and connected to the aircraft with a soft, mechanical sound. The aircraft door opened and Captain James Mitchell stepped into the terminal wearing a crisp uniform that looked like it had been pressed minutes ago. He was 51, lean, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone who had flown corporate executives and heads of state around the world. Mitchell's eyes swept the terminal, taking in the crowd, the cameras, the obvious tension. He had been flying for Cameron for 6 years, and he had never seen anyone treat his boss with anything less than complete respect. Until today. "Good morning, Mr. Brooks," Mitchell said, walking toward Cameron with military precision. "Aircraft is fueled and ready. Flight plan to Chicago is filed. We can depart whenever you're ready, sir." The word "sir" landed on the terminal like a gavel. Jennifer watched a uniformed pilot address the man she had called a fraud, a trespasser, a suspect with the kind of deference that comes from genuine respect rather than fear. Elena Vasquez added to her incident report. 11:31 a.m. Brooks Global Enterprises corporate aircraft arrived at gate. Captain addressed Mr. Brooks as Sir with obvious respect and familiarity. Terminal atmosphere completely transformed. Cameron shook Mitchell's hand. "Thank you, Captain. I need a few more minutes to address some things here, but we'll depart shortly." Mitchell nodded and stepped aside, remaining visible as a uniformed reminder of everything Jennifer and Robert had refused to believe. Dr. Torres approached Cameron. "Mr. Brooks, what you just did, using your position to educate rather than punish, that's genuine leadership. I've never seen anything like it." Cameron looked at the doctor with appreciation. "Dr. Torres, you found your voice when it mattered. That's courage, and it made a difference today." Patterson was fielding another urgent call from Skyline Airlines headquarters. When he finished, he addressed Cameron directly. "Mr. Brooks, our CEO wants to know if there's anything we can do immediately to address this situation and begin making amends for what happened." Cameron considered the question. He could demand terminations, threaten to cancel contracts, use his company's $47 million in annual business as leverage. But those would be short-term solutions to a long-term problem. David, I don't want revenge. I want change. Real, lasting change in how your employees see and treat passengers who don't match their expectations. Alex Thompson couldn't believe what he was documenting. Instead of using his power to destroy the people who had wronged him, Cameron Brooks was using it to create opportunities for education and reform. It was the kind of leadership that restored faith in human nature. Jennifer finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Mr. Brooks, I don't know what to say. Cameron looked at her with something that might have been compassion. Jennifer, you said what you believed. The problem isn't that you're a bad person. The problem is that you were given authority without training power, without accountability, and assumptions without examination. Those are correctable mistakes. The grace in his response shocked everyone watching. Instead of humiliating Jennifer further, Cameron was offering her a path toward understanding and redemption. It was the kind of magnanimity that separated leaders from bullies. Robert Coleman had been standing near the security desk, watching his world collapse in real time. Cameron's arrival, the private jet, the revelation of his identity, the live stream that was broadcasting his failure to thousands of people. It was overwhelming. But Cameron's words to Jennifer gave him hope that maybe somehow this situation could end with learning rather than just punishment. Alex's phone battery was at 7%. But he had captured something extraordinary. A discrimination incident that became a teachable moment. A confrontation that became a conversation. A moment of injustice that became an opportunity for education. Everyone watching Alex said to his audience, "We've just witnessed something unprecedented." Instead of using his power to destroy the people who discriminated against him, Cameron Brooks is using it to create change. This is what transformational leadership looks like. Cameron checked his watch, 11:35 a.m. He had been in the terminal for nearly 2 hours, but he had accomplished something more valuable than catching a flight. He had created a moment of truth that would ripple outward through social media news coverage and corporate boardrooms across the country. But he wasn't finished yet. David Patterson's phone rang again, and this time he put the call on speaker. David, this is Margaret Chen, CEO of Skyline Airlines. I've been briefing our board of directors on the situation at Gate B14. The mention of the CEO's name sent a visible shock through every Skyline Airlines employee in the terminal. Margaret Chen was legendary in the aviation industry, known for swift decision-making and zero tolerance for discrimination. Mr. Brooks Chen continued, her voice carrying across the terminal. I cannot adequately express how appalled I am by what I've seen on this live stream. This behavior violates every principle our company claims to uphold. Cameron stepped closer to Patterson's phone. Margaret, I appreciate you taking this seriously. What matters now is how Skyline Airlines responds. I've made several decisions that I wanted to share with you, and everyone present, Chen said. First, Jennifer Martinez is terminated effective immediately. Her admission of appearance-based discrimination disqualifies her from any position involving passenger interaction. Jennifer felt the words hit her like a physical blow. 9 years of employment gone in a single sentence. She had built her identity around her authority, her control, her position as terminal supervisor. Without that, she wasn't sure who she was. But she also understood with painful clarity that she had earned this consequence through her own choices. Second Chen continued. Officer Robert Coleman's security contract with Denver Airport is being reviewed and will likely be terminated pending the outcome of a full investigation. Robert closed his eyes and leaned against the wall. He had left the police force under a cloud of suspicion about excessive force. Now he was losing his airport security position for discriminatory conduct. At 48, he was running out of careers and chances to start over. Third Chen said Elena Vasquez is being promoted to terminal supervisor, effective immediately. Her courage in defending a passenger's rights exemplifies the leadership we need. Elena felt her knees nearly buckle. From gate agent to terminal supervisor in a single conversation. From being threatened with termination to being promoted to the position of the person who had threatened her. It was surreal and overwhelming and deeply validating. Elena Patterson said, "Congratulations. You've earned this promotion through your integrity and professionalism." Alex Thompson's live stream exploded with comments. Justice Elena deserved this. Real consequences for discrimination. This is how change happens. Share this everywhere. Dr. Torres watched Elena's promotion with satisfaction. He had witnessed her courage firsthand, had seen her risk everything to defend a stranger's dignity. If more people had Elena's moral clarity, incidents like this would be impossible. Cameron addressed Chen directly. "Margaret, I appreciate the swift action, but individual consequences are only the beginning. This incident revealed broader problems with training policy and culture that require broader solutions." "I agree completely," Chen replied, "which is why I'm also announcing the Brooks Initiative, a company-wide anti-discrimination program funded with $10 million and named in honor of your father's legacy of building success through treating people with dignity." Cameron felt something tighten in his chest. His father's name attached to a program designed to prevent the kind of discrimination Marcus Brooks had faced his entire career. It was fitting and painful and perfect. "Thank you, Margaret. My father would be honored." Jennifer listened to these announcements with a mixture of despair and something that might have been relief. Her career at Skyline Airlines was over, but maybe her ability to learn from this experience was just beginning. Maybe being forced to confront her biases was the first step toward becoming the person she should have been all along. Alex's phone battery dropped to 4%, but he had documented something historic. Real-time accountability, immediate consequences, and corporate leadership taking responsibility for institutional failures. His journalism professors would use this footage in classes for years to come. Elena approached Cameron with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Brooks, I don't know how to thank you. I was just doing what felt right, and now—" Elena Cameron said gently, "You did what was right when it would have been easier to stay silent. That's the definition of courage, and it's exactly what we need more of in positions of authority." Dr. Torres stepped forward. "Mr. Brooks, I want to formalize my offer to help with anti-discrimination training. What happened here today happens in hospitals, law firms, restaurants, and every other institution where people make assumptions based on appearance. We need medical professionals who understand the psychological impact of discrimination." Cameron shook the doctor's hand. "I'll have my team contact you this week. Change requires expertise from multiple fields, and we need voices like yours." Patterson addressed the terminal at large. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed here today represents a failure of training oversight and culture that we take full responsibility for. But it also represents an opportunity to do better, to be better, and to ensure that every passenger is treated with dignity regardless of their appearance." Robert Coleman approached the group hesitantly. He had spent the past 2 hours watching his world collapse, but he had also watched Cameron Brooks respond to discrimination with grace rather than revenge, education rather than punishment. "Mr. Brooks." Robert said, his voice heavy with shame, "I owe you an apology that can never be adequate. I let assumptions override my judgment, and I treated you in a way that violated everything I should stand for." Cameron studied Robert's face and saw genuine remorse. "Robert, the fact that you can acknowledge your mistake is the first step toward learning from it. That's not nothing." Alex captured this exchange and felt a sense of completion. He had documented not just discrimination and consequences, but redemption and the possibility of growth. It was the kind of story that restored faith in human nature's capacity for change. Captain Mitchell approached Cameron. "Sir, we're ready for departure whenever you are. But if I may say so, what you accomplished here today was more important than any business meeting in Chicago." Cameron looked around the terminal one last time. At Elena, now wearing the authority she had earned through courage. At Dr. Torres, who had found his voice and would never lose it again. At Alex, who had used technology to create accountability. At Jennifer and Robert, who were learning difficult lessons about assumptions and consequences. Even at the other passengers, many of whom had stayed silent, but had witnessed something they would remember and hopefully apply when they faced their own moments of choice. Captain Cameron said, "Let's go to Chicago. We have work to do." As they walked toward the jetway, Cameron stopped and turned back to address the terminal one final time. "Everyone who witnessed what happened here today has a choice. You can treat this as entertainment, or you can treat it as education. You can share this story for clicks, or you can share it to create change. The choice is yours." Alex's live stream had reached 2,400 viewers and was trending on multiple platforms. As Cameron walked toward his private jet, Alex provided final commentary to his audience. "We've just witnessed something unprecedented. Discrimination exposed in real time, accountability delivered immediately, and leadership demonstrated through grace rather than revenge. This is how change happens when people refuse to stay silent." Cameron paused at the jetway entrance and looked back at Elena, now organizing her new responsibilities with the confidence of someone who had earned her position through integrity. He thought about his father, who had faced discrimination with dignity but had never seen it addressed with such swift public consequences. Marcus Brooks had built a company despite the barriers. Cameron was using that company to remove barriers for others. As he boarded the Brooks Global Enterprises jet, Cameron felt his father's marathon medal against his chest and knew that some races are worth running, even when you're not sure you can finish. But sometimes the most important victories come not from crossing the finish line first, but from refusing to leave the starting block until everyone else has the same chance to run. The Brooks Global Enterprises jet climbed into the Denver sky at 11:47 a.m., carrying Cameron toward Chicago and leaving behind a terminal that would never be quite the same. But the real story was just beginning. Alex Thompson finally ended his live stream at 11:52 a.m. after providing his audience with contact information for civil rights organizations and encouraging everyone to speak up when you see injustice, because your voice matters. His final viewer count reached 2,847, but within 6 hours the archived video had been watched by over 200,000 people and shared across every major social media platform. By 2 p.m., Alex's phone was ringing with interview requests from CNN, MSNBC Today Show and 3 documentary filmmakers. The 20-year-old journalism student who had started streaming to avoid homework had become the primary source for what national media was calling the most significant real-time documentation of workplace discrimination and accountability in recent memory. Elena Vasquez spent her first hour as terminal supervisor, implementing changes that should have existed for years. She issued new guidelines requiring supervisory approval before any passenger could be questioned about ticket legitimacy. She established a passenger advocacy hotline. She scheduled mandatory bias training for all terminal staff. But more importantly, she created a culture where speaking up for passengers' rights was rewarded rather than punished, where doing the right thing was valued over following orders, where dignity was treated as non-negotiable. Her first week's incident reports showed a dramatic decrease in passenger complaints and a notable increase in commendations for respectful service. Word spread quickly through Denver Airport that Terminal B-14 was setting a new standard for customer treatment. Jennifer Martinez cleared out her office that afternoon, packing 9 years of commendations, performance reviews, and authority into a cardboard box that felt impossibly light. She drove home to her apartment in Aurora and sat in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to understand how her life had changed so completely in such a short time. Her phone had been buzzing constantly with calls from reporters, but she hadn't answered any of them. She wasn't ready to talk about what had happened, wasn't ready to explain decisions she couldn't fully understand herself. But 3 days later, Jennifer did something that surprised everyone who knew her. She enrolled in unconscious bias training at the University of Colorado. She began volunteering at a local civil rights organization. She started the difficult work of examining assumptions she had never questioned and rebuilding a worldview based on dignity rather than appearances. It would take years, but Jennifer Martinez would eventually become one of Colorado's most effective anti-discrimination trainers, using her own failure as a teaching tool for others who carried similar biases. Her story would become proof that people can change, that mistakes can become teachable moments, that redemption is possible for those willing to do the work. Robert Coleman lost his security contract that same week. The investigation revealed a pattern of discriminatory enforcement and excessive authority that had been overlooked for years. At 48, he faced the prospect of starting over in a job market that wasn't kind to former law enforcement officers with questionable records. But Robert's response surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of blaming others or making excuses, he acknowledged his failures and began working to understand them. He entered therapy to address the unconscious biases that had shaped his career. He volunteered at community centers in predominantly minority neighborhoods, learning to see people as individuals rather than stereotypes. Like Jennifer Roberts' path toward redemption would be long and difficult. But his willingness to confront his own prejudices would eventually make him an effective advocate for criminal justice reform and police accountability. Dr. Michael Torres returned to Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital with a new sense of purpose. He couldn't stop thinking about those 25 minutes of silence, about how his medical training had prepared him to save lives, but not to protect dignity outside the operating room. Within 2 weeks, Dr. Torres had developed a bystander intervention training program specifically designed for healthcare professionals. The program taught medical personnel how to recognize discrimination in clinical settings and how to intervene effectively without compromising patient care. The program was so successful that it was adopted by hospital systems across Colorado and eventually nationwide. Dr. Torres became a sought-after speaker on the intersection of medical ethics and civil rights, using his experience at Gate B14 as a case study in the moral obligation to speak up. His 25 minutes of silence had taught him that expertise in one area doesn't excuse inaction in others, that the skills we use to save lives must also be applied to protect dignity. David Patterson spent the remainder of that day in crisis management mode, fielding calls from Skyline Airlines, corporate headquarters, legal departments, and media relations teams. But he also spent time reviewing security footage from other terminals, examining passenger complaint records, and acknowledging that Gate B14 wasn't an isolated incident. Within a month, Patterson had implemented the Brooks Initiative across all Skyline Airlines facilities in the Western Division. The program included mandatory bias training, revised passenger interaction protocols, and an independent oversight board with authority to investigate discrimination complaints. More importantly, Patterson changed Skyline's hiring and promotion criteria to prioritize emotional intelligence and cultural competency alongside technical qualifications. The airline began recruiting from diverse communities and promoting employees who demonstrated the kind of moral courage Elena Vasquez had shown. Customer satisfaction scores in Patterson's division increased by 23% within 6 months, and passenger complaints related to discriminatory treatment dropped to nearly zero. The Brooks Initiative became a model for the entire aviation industry. Alex Thompson's journalism career was launched overnight. His documentation of the Gate B14 incident earned him internship offers from CNN, NBC, and 3 major newspapers. He chose to stay in Denver and work with a civil rights organization using his technical skills to train activists in digital documentation and storytelling. The success of his live stream had taught Alex that journalism isn't just about reporting stories. It's about creating accountability, building bridges between communities, and giving voice to people whose experiences might otherwise go unnoticed. He established a non-profit organization dedicated to training citizen journalists in marginalized communities, believing that the most powerful stories come from people who live them, rather than professional reporters who observe them. Cameron Brooks landed in Chicago at 2:15 p.m. Central Time and immediately convened a meeting with his legal team communications directors and civil rights attorneys. The goal wasn't revenge against Skyline Airlines or Denver Airport, but rather the creation of lasting change across the transportation industry. Within 48 hours, Brooks Global Enterprises had established a $25 million fund for anti-discrimination initiatives at airports nationwide. The company created partnerships with civil rights organizations, diversity training firms, and academic institutions to develop comprehensive programs addressing bias in customer service. But Cameron's most significant decision was personal rather than corporate. He announced that Brooks Global would no longer do business with any transportation company that couldn't demonstrate measurable progress in eliminating discriminatory practices. Given Brooks Global's $3.4 billion in annual revenue and contracts with virtually every major airline and shipping company in America, this decision created industry-wide pressure for meaningful change rather than cosmetic reforms. Margaret Chen, CEO of Skyline Airlines, used the Gate B-14 incident as a catalyst for comprehensive organizational transformation. The Brooks Initiative expanded from a single program to a complete reimagining of how airlines interact with passengers. Within 6 months, Skyline had retrained every customer-facing employee, revised all passenger service protocols, and established passenger advocacy offices at every major hub. The airline created an independent oversight board with authority to investigate discrimination complaints and implement corrective measures. Most significantly, Chen made bias prevention a core component of executive compensation, tying bonuses and promotions to measurable improvements in inclusive customer service. The message was clear: treating all passengers with dignity wasn't just the right thing to do, it was a business imperative. By year's end, Skyline Airlines had been recognized as the industry leader in customer service excellence and had become the preferred carrier for many minority-owned businesses and civil rights organizations. The company's stock price increased by 18%, demonstrating that ethical behavior and financial success weren't mutually exclusive. The ripple effects continued spreading. Other airlines adopted similar programs. Airport authorities implemented new training requirements. Transportation workers' unions began including anti-discrimination clauses in their contracts. Federal regulators launched investigations into discriminatory practices across the industry. But perhaps the most important change was cultural rather than institutional. The Gate B-14 incident had been witnessed by millions of people through social media shares and news coverage. It had become a case study in business schools, civil rights training programs, and diversity workshops across the country. The story demonstrated that discrimination has consequences, that bystanders have power, that institutions can change when pressure is applied effectively, and that leadership means using privilege to protect dignity rather than demand deference. 6 months after the Gate B-14 incident, Cameron Brooks returned to Denver International Airport. This time he wore a tailored Navy suit and carried a leather briefcase, traveling openly as the CEO of Brooks Global Enterprises. But his destination wasn't the premium terminal. Instead, he walked directly to Terminal B-14, where Elena Vasquez had transformed a space once associated with discrimination into a model of respectful customer service. The terminal had been renamed the Marcus Brooks Dignity Lounge, honoring Cameron's father's memory and establishing a permanent reminder that respect isn't earned through appearance or status, but through simple humanity. A brass plaque near the entrance read, "Dedicated to the belief that every passenger deserves dignity regardless of their appearance, background, or destination." Elena greeted Cameron personally, her confidence and authority evident in every gesture. Under her leadership, Terminal B-14 had become the highest-rated passenger facility in Denver Airport, with customer satisfaction scores that exceeded industry standards by 40%. Mr. Brooks Elena said, "Welcome back. I wanted you to see what we've built here." Cameron looked around the terminal and saw changes that went far beyond new signage and fresh paint. The staff moved with purposeful respect, treating every passenger as if they were personally responsible for their experience. Gate agents took time to answer questions thoroughly. Security personnel helped rather than interrogated. Supervisors supported their teams rather than intimidated them. But more importantly, Cameron saw passengers who felt genuinely welcome. Families traveling with young children weren't made to feel like inconveniences. Business travelers weren't treated as more important than leisure passengers. People wearing casual clothes received the same courtesy as those in expensive suits. Elena had created what Cameron's father had always believed was possible, a space where dignity was the default rather than the exception. Dr. Michael Torres approached them carrying a folder of training materials for the bystander intervention program that had grown from their chance encounter at Gate B-14. The program was now used by hospitals, universities, corporations, and government agencies across the country. Cameron, Dr. Torres said, "I wanted to share some statistics with you. In the 6 months since we implemented bystander intervention training, incidents of reported discrimination in healthcare settings have decreased by 67%, while intervention rates have increased by 340%. People are finding their voices." The numbers were encouraging, but Cameron was more interested in the individual stories Dr. Torres shared, nurses speaking up when patients were treated dismissively. Doctors challenging colleagues who made assumptions based on appearance. Administrators creating policies that protected dignity rather than convenience. Each intervention represented a moment when someone chose courage over comfort, action over silence, dignity over hierarchy. They were proof that change was possible, sustainable, and contagious. Alex Thompson had been documenting the transformation at Gate B-14 for a follow-up story about institutional change and accountability. Now, 21, he had become one of Denver's most respected investigative journalists, specializing in stories about social justice and corporate responsibility. Mr. Brooks Alex said, "I've been interviewing passengers who use Terminal B-14 regularly. They tell me this is the only airport terminal in America where they never worry about being judged or questioned based on their appearance. Elena has created something truly special here." Cameron nodded. Elena's success had prompted other terminals and airlines to adopt similar approaches. The Brooks Initiative had spread beyond Skyline Airlines to Delta, United American, and Southwest. Airport authorities in Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and New York had implemented comparable programs, but the change went deeper than policy reforms and training programs. The Gate B-14 incident had sparked a national conversation about the assumptions people make based on appearance, the power of documentation in creating accountability, and the importance of speaking up when witnessing injustice. Jennifer Martinez had requested this meeting as part of her ongoing journey toward understanding and redemption. She approached the group, hesitantly, still carrying shame from that Sunday morning 6 months earlier, but also carrying knowledge and perspective that had been hard-earned through honest self-examination. Mr. Brooks Jennifer said, "I wanted to thank you for responding to my failure with education rather than destruction. The unconscious bias training I've completed, the volunteering I've done, the conversations I've had. None of it would have happened if you had simply had me fired and forgotten." She paused, gathering courage for what came next. "I've spent 6 months learning about the experiences of people I never took time to understand. I've read histories I never knew existed, heard stories I never thought to listen to, examined assumptions I never knew I carried. I can't undo what I did to you, but I can make sure I never do it to anyone else." Cameron studied Jennifer's face and saw genuine transformation. The authoritarian certainty that had defined her interactions 6 months earlier had been replaced by humility, curiosity, and hard-won wisdom. Jennifer Cameron said accountability isn't just about consequences. It's about learning growth and commitment to doing better. What you've accomplished in these 6 months demonstrates that people can change when they're willing to do the work. Jennifer had indeed done the work. She had become one of Colorado's most effective anti-discrimination trainers, using her own experience as a case study in how unconscious bias manifests in positions of authority. Her presentations to corporate groups, law enforcement agencies, and educational institutions were powerful because they came from authentic recognition of failure rather than theoretical knowledge. Robert Coleman had also requested to attend this reunion. His transformation had been equally dramatic. After losing his security position, he had spent months in therapy, community service, and education. He had confronted the assumptions and prejudices that had shaped his approach to law enforcement and security work. "Mr. Brooks," Robert said, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness for how I treated you, but I wanted you to know that your grace in that moment taught me something I couldn't learn in 20 years of police work, that real authority comes from protecting people's dignity, not from asserting power over them." Robert had found new purpose working with a police accountability organization, training law enforcement officers in de-escalation techniques and bias recognition. His experience at Gate B14 had become a cornerstone of his presentations about the importance of treating all citizens with respect regardless of their appearance or circumstances. Like Jennifer, Robert had discovered that admitting failure can be the first step toward meaningful change, that accountability can lead to growth rather than just punishment. Cameron looked around at the group that had gathered. Elena, who had found her voice and used it to create lasting change. Dr. Torres, who had learned to apply his medical ethics to social situations. Alex, who had used technology to create transparency. Jennifer and Robert, who had confronted their biases and emerged as advocates for the people they had once wronged. Each person represented a different aspect of how individuals and institutions can respond to moments of moral clarity. Some had acted heroically from the beginning. Others had found their courage after delay or failure, but all had ultimately chosen growth over defensiveness, learning over denial, action over apathy. The Brooks Initiative had expanded beyond aviation to include hospitality, retail, healthcare, and education. The program's core principles, dignity as a right appearance as irrelevant to worth intervention as everyone's responsibility, had been adopted by organizations across multiple industries. But Cameron's proudest accomplishment wasn't corporate or institutional. It was personal, the knowledge that his father's name was now associated with protecting the dignity Marcus Brooks had sometimes been denied, that the company built through one man's determination was being used to ensure others wouldn't face the same barriers. As the group prepared to part ways, Cameron pulled out his father's marathon medal, the same one he had worn that Sunday morning 6 months earlier. He looked at it for a moment, thinking about races finished, and started about distances covered and obstacles overcome. "This medal belonged to my father," Cameron said. "He earned it by refusing to quit when the race got difficult. Today I'm giving it to Elena because she's running the same race, the race for dignity, respect, and equal treatment, and she's making sure everyone else gets to run it too." Elena accepted the medal with tears in her eyes, understanding its significance not just as a symbol of athletic achievement, but as a legacy of perseverance in the face of discrimination. The gathering ended with handshakes, embraces, and commitments to continue the work of creating a world where appearance doesn't determine treatment, where speaking up is valued over staying silent, where institutions protect dignity rather than perpetuate bias. 1 year later, Cameron Brooks stood at his father's gravestone in Denver's Riverside Cemetery wearing running shorts and carrying a new marathon medal. He had just completed the Denver Marathon in 3:22.8 minutes, faster than the previous year, running not away from memory, but toward legacy. The headstone was simple granite with words that captured a life lived with dignity. Marcus Brooks, builder, father, man who never let anyone else define his worth. Cameron placed the new medal beside the headstone and sat down in the grass, something he did every Sunday morning since that day at Gate B14. These conversations with his father had become a weekly ritual, a time to reflect on progress made and challenges ahead. Dad Cameron said quietly, "Elena's doing remarkable work at the terminal. Dr. Torres' training program is being used in hospitals across 15 states. Alex just won a journalism award for documenting social change. Even Jennifer and Robert have found ways to turn their mistakes into meaning." The morning was peaceful, with Denver's skyline visible in the distance and the sound of aircraft overhead, the constant hum of people traveling to destinations that represented dreams, opportunities, and connections. "The Brooks Initiative has been adopted by 47 companies now," Cameron continued. "Not just airlines, but hotels, retail stores, restaurants. Your name is teaching people about dignity in ways I never could have planned." A gentle breeze moved through the cemetery, rustling leaves on the oak trees Marcus Brooks had helped plant during a community service project 20 years earlier. Even in death, he was still building, still contributing, still making spaces better for everyone who encountered them. Cameron pulled out his phone and looked at a message from Elena Terminal B14, just received the National Customer Service Excellence Award. "None of this would have happened without your father's example and your courage. Thank you for showing us what leadership really looks like." Similar messages arrived weekly from people whose lives had been changed by witnessing or participating in that Sunday morning confrontation. Teachers who now intervened when students were bullied. Managers who created more inclusive workplaces. Parents who taught their children to judge people by character rather than appearance. The ripples continued spreading in ways Cameron couldn't track but could feel in every interaction, every small act of courage, every moment when someone chose dignity over discrimination. As Cameron prepared to leave, he placed his hand on his father's headstone one more time. "I'm still running your race, Dad, and I'm making sure everyone else gets a chance to run it too." Walking back toward his car, Cameron felt the weight of purpose that comes from turning personal pain into public progress, from using privilege to protect those who have none, from building bridges instead of walls. The race for dignity never truly ends, but every step forward makes the path smoother for those who follow. And sometimes the most important victory isn't crossing the finish line first, it's making sure everyone gets an equal chance to run. This story reminds us that dignity belongs to everyone regardless of how they look or what they wear. The next time you see someone being treated unfairly, remember your voice matters. Your actions have consequences, and courage can be as simple as refusing to stay silent. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand up and say, "This isn't right." Thank you for reading, and remember, everyone deserves respect, everyone has a story, and everyone belongs.